Hello, folks. This is Tim at lovechangegrow.com, and today is Sunday, September 17th, 2023. And this little video is basically a summation and kind of a story of my experience back in 1982 in a flotation tank. And just to note, I've made a post about that quite a while ago, a year maybe ago. It was called Psychedelics Out of the Closet. So if you want to take a look at that, that kind of gives some other thoughts that I'll try not to repeat here. So for the past 3 weeks, 3 posts, it's been basically looking at consciousness from different metaphors of a vehicle, as a computer data operation kind of thing. And you can go back and look at those kind of metaphors. But today I wanted to focus on what I discovered back in 1982 from my experience. So I'm going to just briefly outline that. And I think the relevance that we're seeing now is that I think where we're at as far as on this planet, we can look at consciousness as an opportunity to make some changes. And from my experience, background, career, sometimes we really don't have much of a choice or much control of events that happen. However, we do have the ability to control, or the ability to respond, and we have the ability to question and determine mindfully what our response will be. And that's really the nutshell of it, is that we may not, in all these situations and stuff in life, whatever, things happen, but it's really how we respond to those things that happen. And by our response, then we're able to kind of have a better opportunity, because we're taking the opportunity to be mindful and kind of just sit for a moment or a few moments and go, what's the best way for me to respond in whatever situation is happening? And I think the challenge these days in our contemporary experience is we're going to have to really develop that sense. And so I know from being in the rabbit hole, a lot of people are going, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, the earth is cracking, all kinds of stuff. And admittedly, I agree that we have some definite challenges here at this time on the planet. But more importantly is, how do we choose to respond to those so that we can make some meaningful and purposeful change? So that's kind of the big picture. And so I want to just jump right into it. And so back in 1982, I had the opportunity to jump in a flotation tank for 3 hours. And this was back in Boulder, Colorado. And of course, I'd vaguely heard about tanks. And then when I was out there visiting a friend, the opportunity came up. And so I jumped in the tank for 3 hours, not really knowing what to expect, but I figured, hey, this sounds interesting. And I was aware of some of John Lilly's experiences in the tank with, I forget what kind of a hallucinogenic, but now it's really interesting with the research in plant medicine and the interest in ayahuasca and all kinds of stuff, even ketamine, which was kind of came from John Lilly back in the day. So I think basically we're doing Vipassana meditation, and I've talked about that elsewhere. In mindfulness, Vipassana, I think there's some posts that relate to that. But it's basically, Vipassana is like a technique of examining yourself, examining your thoughts, your feelings, examining the situation, trying to become more situationally aware, both internally and externally, of what's happening around you. And it's a nice way to kind of be able to pay attention to perhaps whatever situation, perhaps crisis that's in your face, but also having this other part of you out here in a form of sort of a witnessing type of consciousness to look at the situation, the crisis happening here. So on one hand, you're kind of the split kind of reality or split consciousness, paying attention to the crisis in your hand, and also being out here and looking and having a larger view of the situation, various agendas, various forces, drives, motivations, and stuff. And that happens both internally. What are you feeling? What are your thoughts? What are you thinking is going to be, or feeling is going to be an appropriate response as far as your behaviors, but also externally in looking at, well, what are the drivers of this situation? What are the other people's, other parties' vested interest and agendas? So Vipassana meditation, I think, is a great tool to become more situationally aware, both of your internal state and what's happening out there. And it helped me in my career in crisis consulting, crisis evaluations, to certainly be able to sort out what are the important or salient factors and things that are happening. And so then when I jumped in the tank, I had this awesome experience and a very deeply healing experience, and it certainly changed the course of my life in this little 3 hour adventure in the tank. And I don't know if I'll get into this because then it gets way too long of my actual feelings and thoughts. But the point is the flotation or sensory deprivation or restricted environmental stimulation technique, therapy, rest is a great laboratory, so to speak, because even in meditation or whatever introspective contemplation kind of a posture or technique that you're doing, you still have your various things to deal with, such as light, sound, gravity, and so. But the tank isolates you from basically the external environment. And so you're laying in the tank, just floating along, and because of the various properties of the tank of being basically skin temperature, basically almost zero type of gravity, your body, physical sensory kind of things quickly what do you call it, habituate and gosh, what's a better word, basically your body disappears because you don't have any stimulus coming into your senses of touch, smell, light, hearing, and so it frees up a lot of mental processing. And whatever happens inside of the flotation tank is logically, whatever's there, whatever your experience is from you. There's no outside influences. So it offers a unique environment to basically take a look at yourself and experience yourself. And in that experience, whatever floats up to the top or becomes aware, comes up, rises up to your conscious level, that's an opportunity to look at, well, what is this? Why is this happening? Where did this come from? What are these feelings and thoughts and memory experiences about? And intuitively, if you kind of look at those as opportunities to examine yourself without all the distraction of the noise, environment, gravity, light, sound, all that, is it really, in my experience, really enhanced the ability to focus in and use it. Going back to the Vipassana meditation, basically you learn to focus by breath, but then the point is learning to focus intently, like laser focus. You can just beam on in on this, and in a sense, from a laser standpoint, you beam in, so this problem rises up. Okay, it can be a tension, a pain, an emotional knot, perhaps a trauma kind of experience where you have this kind of knot sitting there that's just there. And because you're in this tank environment, most of the time we're out there just looking around, living our life. And perhaps we know this little trauma experience is sitting there, but then when we kind of are able to ignore or have the opportunity to get away from all the environment stuff, this little knot kind of floats up to our consciousness. And then we use our focus and really focus on that knot, because we have much more power or capacity, uh, amplitude to do that, because we are not paying attention to all this other external stuff. And so we can focus on this little knot, and just focusing one-minded, one-pointedness is sort of like this laser beam hitting this knot, and then it starts to open up. Now, then you have this sort of second mode of Vipassana meditation, being this ability to be out here and look at it. So you may experience the crisis kind of in your face, but on the other hand, you have this other witness consciousness looking at this, and not being either repelled or recoil from it in a fear standpoint, nor being kind of this, like, you want to get into it, and so you're not so obsessed about it. So you have some detachment out here with this consciousness looking at it, and you have this equanimity, or calmness, or the ability to just kind of have some composure and look at this knot, kind of look at this knot, observe it from out here, and watch it open up. And in that watching, then you get to see, well, where did this come from? What was this experience that happened to me, perhaps in childhood or infancy, or some other, more recent kind of trauma or overwhelming experience. But you're out here looking at it more from a detached, um, um, more mentally together, and you see this knot open up. And from out here, you can understand and kind of be able to reinterpret, or you become more aware of some of these other situational factors that you weren't aware of. And from that, then that's where you gain that second sort of insight in Vipassana meditation, is having this detached state. You can look at it, or this detached consciousness where you can look at it and get a reinterpretation, because it's not necessarily a reinterpretation, but an expanded interpretation, because now you have more, you become more aware and expanded of the situation, and you go, oh, this is why. Maybe not why it happened, but you can see, oh, this is how I responded, because I responded in my capacity of being an 8-year-old kid, or 2-year-old infant. And in that, then you go, oh, well, I'm no longer the infant, and I have this more developed this ability via Vipassana to look at this, and I have a more expanded awareness out here looking. And then I think, at least in my case, I was able to go, oh, okay, this is what happens. I'm able to attach a different interpretation of meaning and purpose of why this event happened, which is basically you're able to now respond, or you have an awareness and you can respond to it differently. And so, um, part of this is, in a sense, the experience between consciousness, Vipassana, and the tank is a doorway. And once you've been through the door a few times, you go, oh yeah, now I know how to do it. I don't need the tank, and that's one way to look at it. So then you can start looking at various responses in yourself, and now that you know this sort of witness or observational awareness, you can start looking at things both internally in your life as they happen and externally in various situations and relationships, family, work, or current events. And you can look at it from out here and go, oh, okay, well, this is just, you have an expanded awareness, expanded situational awareness. And so you don't have to respond in a crisis or in a responsive kind of thing. You can do it more from a place of composure and go, what is the best response? How should I respond? And that's where, when I talk about, then you're responding from integrity and compassion, gracefulness, and sovereignty. Whereas if you're just responding to the crisis in your face, that's more generally what, we popularly term that as a defensive kind of response, where you feel like, oh, you're fearful, you're acting out of a sense of scarcity, you're acting out of a sense of survival, the old kind of reptilian mindset of the 5 F's, what is it? Fight, flee, freeze, food, and fornication are the 5 F's. And so once you have this expanded awareness, of course, you can say, yeah, I could respond in one of the 5 F's, or I can go, well, yeah, well, now that I have a bit different observational awareness of the situation, I can choose my response better. So one of the, I did grad research in flotation tanks and stuff like that. I was hoping it was going to be different, in that I was more wanting to investigate the whole transpersonal realm and stuff like that. And I kind of hint at that in Psychedelics Out of the Closet. But my professor wasn't there, and he was like, no, let's be empirical. Let's do the statistical empirical research model and stuff like that, which in the end was very valuable because it taught me how to look at things and understand what was going on as far as more scientific empirical research. It didn't change my thoughts about transpersonal experiences and stuff. But it gave me a deeper appreciation of the scientific approach and method. But more importantly, what it cued me into was my major professor. He said, look, in some ways, tanks are great. They're a very unique experience, a very unique environment, but they come with a lot of capital cost. A tank, 800 pounds of magnesium sulfate or Epsom salt to float, and then you have all the, cleaning and maintenance of tanks and the room and setup and all that. And it can become very spendy. And so last time I looked, an hour in a float tank, was getting up to like $70, $80 an hour to float. And back when I floated, it was $5 an hour. And I had $15 in my pocket. There you go. Let's go for 3 hours. I would have done more if I would have had more money in my pocket. But getting back to my major professor, he said, look, you can do the same or nearly the same thing with hypnosis. And there's basically the ability you do hypnosis is usually you go to a hypnotherapist or somebody, and if you have the propensity to be hypnotized, it's pretty easy. You kind of arrange the little hypnotic plan, the little adventure, and a person can put you in a state of regression or progression. Time and space don't really matter. It's like, where are we going? What are we doing? And the popular sense is doing that with a hypnotherapist or somebody. And there's some very cool stuff with in the Dolores Cannon sort of tradition or area with the quantum healing hypnosis or beyond quantum healing hypnosis kind of stuff, where basically the therapist has basically takes you back to the various places. What's the significance, and then moves you forward to your future self or your higher self, and all that. And that's well and good if a person isn't experienced or wants the experience. But you can also do that in auto hypnosis. Basically, it's a meditative state that you self-induce into, and a lot of meditation. When you get beyond sort of the yoga kind of the current kind of yoga, physical manipulation, cleaning your body, detoxing, and all this other stuff, from a more meditative state, it's just an awareness or a consciousness position that you put yourself in, and you can zoom around. And I know the tank is the I guess the happening thing right now is the psychedelics, the John Hopkins, Matthew Johnson, Rick Doblin kind of stuff, and then you get into so that's all the mushroom and plant medicine kind of stuff, and then there's the oh gosh, the medicine man or woman kind of guides and things like that. But you can also the tank offers an opportunity to experience that, either with or without, and if you're going to do it unguided, you'd need to be kind of aware of some of these spaces you can get into, which can be pretty weird. And well, I initially started this by I had a lot of experience in these various weird states, either via meditation or hallucinogenic kind of things. So I was able to basically use my consciousness as vehicles to explore different things, as gateways to explore different things. And so by the time when I did the tank, which I was into it by that time about 10 years, and it was like, oh, okay, this is what's happening, and it was a wonderful experience. So what that also taught me is a way to respond to external events. And so then I ended up in a career in mental health, specializing in crisis mental health. And it ended up being, what I believe I talked about last week was basically you have the contemplative kind of pathway of the inner exploratory exploration of yourself, of consciousness. And then there's the second piece. For me, it was the second. Some other people, I imagine, it's the first path they tread down. for me, it was the second path of service, of learning how to interact with the environment, of with people, with people in crisis, and so that's more of a service or an expressive path where, you know, and what I mean by expressive is that interactional path with your environment, with people and beings and whatever in your environment, and learning to kind of go, take a look from uh, the Vipassana thing of, oh, what's happening here? What's the larger situation, and what are the forces or salient factors? And so then, that whole expressive and service path was really, for me, sort of like finishing school. And it was about, questioning and trying to develop my sense of integrity, of compassion, of gracefulness, of sovereignty, and especially for me in my mental health experience, well, the question oftentimes is, what is my stuff? Am I projecting it? Or what is their stuff, and what do they need to deal with? How do I need to be? And how can I maintain a position of service to them? And in return, also, I've had tons of experiences where these folks that seemingly had mental health issues or conditions were like great teachers for me to develop my sense of compassion, a sense of gracefulness, of like, oh, this is their sovereign space where they're learning about themselves, and this is mine, and um so I this was, I guess, in some ways, this is what I wanted to get across in this sort of four-part series. And last with this is I hope that folks can see through, and I think next week I'm going to basically put out a little post of, so we have this opportunity, time-wise, planetary-wise, is okay. So if we see all this stuff happening and we kind of get a handle on our internal contemplative experience and our external expressive service experience, so what are we going to do with this consciousness now? A lot of folks are now, kind of going, hey, we got to ascend, and I completely agree. And we have this other part is, hey, we got to deal with all this crap that's happening. How are we going to do that? Which I think between the two, you have the middle here of the gap, and which I've talked about, the gap being the opportunity. And so part of what I really want to point out or encourage is this opportunity here is, how can we step in to the potential of the opportunity and go, hey, let's create something different. We have this magnificent vehicle of our consciousness and of our heart. And how can we, you can think of heart as a right-sided, sort of more poetic, intuitive, in a sense, the sort of female consciousness or women's consciousness kind of thing. And then you have on the left side of your brain here is sort of the male kind of thing, which is more head, logical kind of stuff. And so I think we have an opportunity that is presenting to us where we have this gap where we can learn to use our hearts, our head, learn to work with other people to then create a different future. And I mean that is create a different future, because otherwise, if we're looking at the past, we're kind of rehashing and like re-examining, re-experiencing our past. And there is a lot of crap in our past. But if we're able to kind of look at that as going, oh, okay, this is the past. Yeah, okay, we need to learn from that and move on and create our future. And to get over here to create our future is the opportunity of the gap that's happening now. So there you go. Ran a little longer than I wanted. Thanks. And next week, I think I'm just going to put up. I don't know exactly. I have some ideas, but stay tuned. I'll be back. Thanks. Love you guys.